Here we are. Good evening, Guam. Hafaday Facebook, KUAM News. Decision 2018. We're here at the after party, and our panelists for tonight. Kay Baltazar with the Republican Party of Guam.
Hafaday.
And from the Guam Federation of Teachers, Mr. Sanjay Sharma. Couple great young energetic candidates tonight, and Jack Hattig III and Kenjo Atta. What was you guys' takeaway?
Nothing but love. Right? Kenjo was just so positive with the way he was presenting himself, that he's able to work with everybody that comes his way. That positive attitude, I think, is something we need at the legislature.
Right.
Jack had some good ideas. They were wonderful, but I think if having the two candidates side by side, I'd say Kenjo just had that positive vibe all the way through.
I agree. Yeah, I agree completely. I think Jack is really cerebral. You know, I think he has. He's obviously really, really smart, educated. You know, he's a former teacher, and like Sanjay said, he has some good ideas.
Right.
But there's something about Kenjo that is just so positive. It's infectious. You know, it's like you can't help but be.
He's that one friend who's just like always positive, and
sure.
Sometimes it gets in the
yeah.
But you know, most of the time it makes you be positive too.
Yeah. And I mean, his ideas. I think he has some very broad ideas,
right.
And maybe that's by design. You know, maybe he's going to flesh them out, you know, in the future. But yeah, that he spoke this message of, I mean, just love. Every answer was, you know, just positive. So.
Right. Sanjay, you know, I think the timing of having you on here was pretty interesting because, you know, when we had Jack Hattig on D18 last time, we were talking about the case that he caught for having a sexual relationship with a student when he was a teacher. And you were telling us in the conference room that this incident kind of caused the GFT to kind of rethink the way that they thought about those kind of things before.
Right. It's not just GFT involved. It's our teacher certification. It's a superintendent. It goes all the way even up to UOG, where we want to make sure that the students are kept safe from anything that goes toward their way. That when we talk about student safety, it's just not student safety in terms of having fights being broken up. It's also making sure that students are thought of as whole individuals that have to be kept whole as they go through the education system. And so this whole case that Jack Hattig had, it was making sure that teachers that have any accusations come their way, to have the teachers removed from the classroom, especially with what Jack had gone through, to keep them out of the classroom, let the system work its way through, and if there was anything that was wrong, at least we know that the students were all kept safe from that.
Right, yeah. And it's a really interesting case because we have a sitting lieutenant governor who is getting so much flack for grabbing a gun. I mean, he's facing some misdemeanor charges, and you have this senatorial candidate who, you know, did what Jack did. It's since been expunged, and he's skating by relatively. I mean, it's pretty. You know, no one's really brought it up. I feel like. Right. We're the only people who have really brought it up here.
Well, part of it is, I think Jack led with that.
Right.
You know, before he declared his candidacy, he came out with it and said, you know, I have intentions to run for public office. This isn't something I'm trying to hide, and it's a part of my life I'm not necessarily proud of, and it happened, and I've learned from it, and I've moved on. So I think if it had come out after the fact, that might have been problematic.
But I think, I mean, like, I didn't know that he had come out and addressed it. I mean, I was always familiar with the case just being in the media, and
sure.
I feel like the public still really doesn't know about it, and I think that's why it hasn't really become a big deal. But basically, he was able to get off on the technicality that these students were at the 16? Age of consent, which is 16 years old, which, I mean, you know, legally might be okay, but, you know, morally, ethically,
sure.
Right. Teachers, priests are in these positions of power, and you really don't want to see someone abuse that and then seek, you know, even more power.
Right, and so the rules that DOE had adopted, and same with their certification, is that if they are a student, a superintendent came out with his stand on this as well, saying that if there's any relationship between a teacher and a student, teacher out of the classroom you go.
Yeah.
And GFT fully supports that. And so we don't want that type of relationship to occur ever again.
And that's what I mean. I mean, the public really not knowing. Like, I didn't know that, you know, what Jack did caused you guys to change your whole policy.
It wasn't just one incident. I wish it was just one incident,
Right.
and we can say preferably none, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it did take some correcting on all of our parts, from teacher certification, GFT, to our management with the education board, superintendent. We all had to review what was currently practiced and how to change from there, so
Right.
it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to make you guys uncomfortable, but, you know, of course, I'm that guy who's going to bring things up like that. And I feel like a lot of times things like this on Guam go unchecked because no one wants to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about Jack's ideas. He was very articulate. Pretty Democrat?
Pretty Democrat of not having any layoffs, downsizing the government. You currently have the Democrats here on Guam that want to reduce its footprint as far as the budget goes. But on the same hand, they don't want to lay off employees. They just want to change the practices that the government has. And I think he's addressed those
Right.
as his Democrat platform.
Kind of broad, though, because I mean, and you hear this, every candidate who has come on this couch, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that we need to lay people off. But they always say, cut the wasteful spending, which is so easy to say. I mean, Kate, you're in the government.
I think that he had, apart from the laying off and things like that, he did have good ideas on, which strikingly resemble Republican ideas about.
Namely, Will
He's
Castro.
being mentored.
Yeah.
He's being mentored by Tom
This
Hanks.
sounds really familiar. You know, bringing the government to the people,
Right.
instead of having the people come to the Guam Congress building, for example. He mentioned, you know, going out to the people and getting constituent concerns and things like that. And Senator Will Castro has already done that. You know, he did that before he was the senator. You know, with his mobile office, and so that's great. It's good. I'm sure Senator Castro could use a partner next term if he makes
Bipartisan.
it. Yeah, bipartisan. You know, options.
Meeting in the villages.
Right.
Sure, and public hearings in the villages.
Which is, you know, a great idea. It's not rocket science, though. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
I mean,
had public hearings. in
nothing
villages.
earth-shattering is what
Right,
I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
You know, and it's like what you're saying. It's kind of the standard, you know, rigmarole about. It's unpopular to want to cut people, you know, and it's unpopular because I think they truly just feel that compassion. You know, maybe they just don't want to affect people's livelihoods.
Right.
You know, and for whatever reason. But you're right. It wasn't anything earth shattering or particularly profound.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I'd like to see with Jack is, you know, once we get past you know, I know that he's working closely with outgoing Senator Tom Atta, who is kind of like taking on a mentorship role with, you know, just kind of guiding Jack. And do you hear any Tom Atta when you hear Jack talk? Because, you know, Tom Atta is one of these like moderate, borderline Republican Democrats.
Right. He's not particularly very, very left.
Yeah.
He's very reasonable, and I think he's demonstrated that. Senator Tom Atta has done a lot of things that were bipartisan support, given support that way, you know, if it meant
Some
it was
things
the
that have
best.
caused some of his more, you know, grassroots colleagues to be like, hey, wait a minute,
Sure,
we're Democrats
sure.
here.
Yeah.
What about Kenjo? I feel like Kenjo is, we got a lucid Kenjo tonight, right?
He's always of that right mind.
Yeah.
I think he said he wants to contribute his mind, his heart, and a hand.
Right.
And it's just his positive outlook. I think when he had first come on, it was also trying to have a positive outlook. And so it's just his personality.
Yeah.
I can work with him.
Right.
As a mayor, though, I think we got his mayoral experience really shining through tonight, because in my work with the mayors and some really, really good mayors, you wouldn't last a day in the mayor's shoes if you were anything but positive. I mean, you have to deal day and night with such a
kind of worse than
broad.
being a senator. Think about it.
Well, you're the first line.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a pipe breaks at your house. There's a dead dog in the road. You know, it just comes with being the mayor, right? They want to call the mayor for everything.
Right.
My neighbor's tree is knocked over in my yard, or somebody abandoned their car in my lot, or I mean, they're just a vast. And then they, you know, deal with having to go from, okay, I'm dealing with things on a village level, and then kind of now, if you will, on a state level, right? At a territorial level.
Right.
And so you have to be positive, and that's the Kenjo.
You also have to
that
be competent.
You have to know your resources.
Yeah.
You have to know, okay, where in the times of the solid waste, you know, transfer stations, who gives rental assistance, where can I get food at 11 o'clock at night for this family?
Yeah.
Where, mass transit, you know, are there vouchers for that? Or what's GWA's emergency hotline? I mean, there's just like a vast number of services and know-how and resources you have to know as a mayor.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not nothing, because that's it's just different cross sections of society you have to deal with, you know, and knowing that is a strength. Having that in your arsenal, coming in as a senator, hopefully, that helps tremendously with constituents, and knowing, you know, where to point people for help, because that's what they want. That's what people want. They just want help. They just want answers, you know. So they go to their mayor, they go to the senators, and they just want you to, and you know, this is something that we talked about, Kenjo and I. They just want someone to light their path, you know, because people are really in dark times, you know, and I think we've seen that with the storm, you know, and people were struggling before the storm, and now they're really, really struggling.
Right.
So they just need somebody to help light their way, and Kenjo is just that really positive guy that's like, hey, let me just give you a hand up. I don't have all the answers, but, you know, let me help you with that.
Right. So taking that positive attitude that he has, he did talk about bringing Guam's culture to the forefront. He said that he wants that Guamanian spirit to come out and somehow pass a bill and say that that's going to be our main focus. He said that's the first thing he'll focus on.
Residents Commission.
Right,
Yes.
the Residents Commission.
Defining Guamanians.
Right. I don't know what that's going to entail as far as policy goes. Are we all going to be requiring students to take extra classes in the classroom, find out what Guamanian means? So it sounds nice, but I'd like to see some of the details as to what he means by that.
I mean, they sound like broad strokes, right? But I mean, I think that he does like that to generate conversation.
Well, yes, because it prompted Jason to ask an additional question, like, well, what does it mean to you? You know, because he sort of came out with it, and then the follow-up to that was, well, what does Guamanian mean to you?
And
I think
Kenjo had a great answer
he
for
knocked
that.
it out of the park.
Yeah.
He really did. He said,
He was like, hey, you're Chinese, you're Guamanian, you know?
right, you're Chinese, live here a long time, your kids, you raise your kids here, you're Guamanian, you know. And that's a really great spirit to embody, you know, and
less divisive than some people.
Right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Too bad we can't send him to D.C. to be with Trump, because I think that's what's needed.
So if we get a guy like Kenjo in there, you know, obviously his heart's in the wrong place, but when it gets to the nitty gritty, you know, I mean, you're a longtime grant writer, you know, the nuts and bolts of being a senator, of you know, crafting legislation, of you know, working across the aisle. Do you think Kenjo has what it takes?
You can learn that. You can learn bill writing. And obviously, I mean, he was a professor. He has a master's degree. He's very educated. So I think he understands the research part of it, you know. And putting it in bill form, you know, is something that he can get help with. That kind of, you know, passion and commitment, even though it's unconventional, you can't teach that to somebody running for senator. You just have to have it.
I agree. The current situation that GFT is going through, freeze on increments, freeze on reclassification. You know, we have starting teachers that start off with $34,000 a year, and they're being told they can't have another salary adjustment. You know, having somebody with Kenjo's attitude, I don't think I'd ever have to worry about a senator freezing the increments of teachers ever again. It's that positive attitude. I can work with you. I don't want to harm you. It's that positive outlook And so I think having somebody of a sound mind, somebody that's always looking out for other Guamanians, I think it's going to be a positive experience having him in if he ever gets in.
Now, going back to the bill writing thing, what I'm seeing is, I mean, this current legislature, we've got a bunch of, rookies, but it really comes down to the staff. And like some of the people who work for these first-time senators have, decades of experience. So I'm pretty sure Kenjo and even Jack Hattig, should he be elected, could find that well to kind of draw from.
Yes, and that's the fortunate thing about the legislature is there's so much institutional knowledge that stays. I mean, just from, when I was my first foray into politics, and having family members, for example, working in the 26th Guam legislature and Speaker Ben in the 27th Guam legislature and legislatures since then, a lot of the staff kind of stay around, and they kind of are in different roles and might be with different offices, and some of them have gone from a Democrat senator to a Republican and back, and that just adds to the richness of it, which I think is the difficulty that we face in the executive branch. Is you don't always guarantee having that institutional knowledge of how that all works. You have that a lot in the legislature, I've found.
Right.
Because
you're right, and they do kind of switch around, but
but they're there and have that.
Yeah.
They kind of carry it around, and you hear. I think, towards the middle of our administration, it was great because then we had some folks who had done both. For example, we had Joanne Brown. We have Tony La Morena. We have those guys, and they say, hey, I remember in the 24th, this legislation came out, and
right.
so on. And so that adds richness. We had Chris Duenas, and a lot of former legislators who came, Tello Tardigui.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, that's something that you could pick up and, learn, and you have competent people around you, policy analysts, researchers, who can help you with that.
And I think a lot of times with the administration, the executive branch, when you get a new governor coming in, they want to erase any, evidence of the previous administration. And, you touched on a good point where you talk about institutional knowledge. Maybe some of these, incoming governors, new governors should look at the legislature and start maybe picking some people up from
some
there.
have, yes, and that's why, as I mentioned, some folks have come over, and
right.
some of the staff have come over into agencies and have really given that richness of this is how this policy was written, and here's why.
Right.
So it gives great direction. And everyone wants to know the backstory. Like, why did we do this? For example, the legislation that came out on safe haven, right? The safe haven, I believe it was Senator Mary Torres. And I think 20 years from now, people will just think it's common sense to have somewhere, for babies to be safely, turned over, and we will just have to reach back and say, well, there was a time when babies were being left on, patios and stuff, so we had to unfortunately come up with this legislation, and this is how it came about. I don't know how we got from from Kenjo to the baby legislation, but it's the richness that happens.
That was
when
a
people
Jason
share
Solis level tangent right there.
Right. We love Jay.
So how does Jack Hattig? I mean, the Democrats. It's a pretty strong field of candidates that they have, and how does Jack Hattig kind of get his head above water and get noticed?
That's a good question. Jack Hattig has to come out very specific as to what his policies would be. It's up to him to run with the Democrat platform, to side with the gubernatorial candidate or candidates. It's up to him if he wants to pull from some of the Republican ideas, but he needs to get out there with what his ideas are. And what we've heard were some ideas, but they were going to save maybe $1 or $2, bringing the legislature out to the villages. Well, how does that bring tourists to the island? Because we have to be honest and face that fact that we have to consider that jobs are on the line, and moving from village to village doesn't grow Guam's economy. So,
and I mean, there's also got to be ways to. It reminds me of the olden days when you would have public hearings, in the villages, but with the technology that's available to people, maybe there's easier ways to make
Sure.
government more accessible, right?
Right, and especially when you think of who votes, the voting demographic, you know, that could be, not to say that certain age groups aren't more technologically inclined, but there are some who, you know, especially the older folks, you know, they want to see their senator in their living room.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, right.
They still
Sit
want,
down here, boy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, when I was running, it was a lot of that. It was, you know, it wasn't like a, you know, shake your hand, introduce yourself, give them a pamphlet. It was, what, girl, you're running?
Huh?
Sit down.
Sit down here, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, sit down.
They want to talk to you. They want FaceTime.
What about Kenjo? What does Kenjo have to do? I mean, he already kind of sticks out, but
I think he should just keep doing what he's doing, to be
Yeah.
honest.
yeah.
I think that his message is so positive. You can't find a negative or down, to me.
Right.
I mean, he got a major car dealer to do a spoof and then bring him in. That's gold.
Yeah.
No other candidate has that under their belt. You know what I'm saying? And it's because it's so positive. And
He's
I
almost
think,
like a rock star candidate.
yes. I mean, if you want to put it that way.
Sensation.
You know,
Yeah.
and the same party, you have, you know, my buddy Julius. You would
Yeah.
kind of expect the personality that Kenjo has, that you would expect Julius to have some of that. Or, you know what I mean? It's almost like a little bit of a role reversal where Kenjo, I mean, maybe his bubbly personality will infect some of the other candidates.
It's all timing too. I
Yeah.
think with candidates, it's all timing, and the timing of Kenjo's video going viral
Right.
was just at that perfect time,
Right.
where it was far enough ahead of the primary to where it could get flushed out. Because if it had come out earlier, people would have forgotten about it, and if it had come out any closer to the primary, it might have done damage.
Right.
You know, because people wouldn't have let it permeate and sink in. And, you know, people are like, what is this? Like, you know, and my family was asking me, is this like one of those like stay woke kind of things? Like, am I not understanding this? You know, and so and I said, you know what? It was positive though, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you leave feeling good, sort of perplexed, or, you know, what was your feeling? And they're like, no, I mean, it was definitely positive. Like, he was very, like, just this positive person. So have we as a society just become jaded that we don't recognize,
Of course we have.
you know, this uplifting person? You know, have we become that kind of you know, we're all cynics, right?
Yes, we have.
So
I kind of felt as though when that had broke, that people were picking on him.
Yeah.
And he comes off playing it off, going, oh, you know, it wasn't really all that bad. And so he's just got that bright attitude of, you know, it doesn't matter what others get to say, he's
Right.
going to be pressing on.
Yeah.
And
So, end of the day, do you think that when we look at Kenjo Addo, we're looking at a senator?
you know, it's a tough field. It is a tough field. You have 29 other good, strong candidates.
Right.
And we'll see how the voters vote on this one.
I'm saying absolutely. I mean, he has prior public experience. He has private sector experience, merchant marine. He was a professor at the University of Guam. He's educated. He has a beautiful family. He's a legacy candidate.
Right.
And so I think he has that package.
What about Jack Hattig? Senator Jack Hattig, or
Right. Again, we'll
Maybe
see
next
how
time.
we'll see how the vote turns out on him. I think right now, if I had to choose between the two candidates that were up here today,
Team Kenjo?
Kenjo, right? Kenjo used to be a former mayor. I've known him when he was a mayor,
Right.
going out to his constituents.
And he could have just kept running for mayor forever.
Could have if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something. I mean, look at other mayors. I mean, their career. You talk about career politicians. I mean,
Nito Blas.
yeah,
Mayor Nito was mayor of my village for a long time. when he
right.
left.
So Kenjo could
Forever.
have taken that route, but you know, I know Kenjo. We're related.
Yes.
He walked away because he was just like, I did what I wanted to do, and that's that. And now he's set his sights on the legislature. So I guess we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah.
You know, thank you, Kate, for coming by. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
It wasn't that bad, right?
It's always a pleasure to be here.
We didn't even get to the LT, so hey, story for another time. Right?
Yeah, I'll bring. I make Kevlar. So. But I won't need it with you.
No,
So
Sanjay.
you're a classy guy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, and
Thank
hey,
you so
most of all,
much.
thank you guys for watching. You know, it's been another K-Wave News D18 after party. We are back Monday with. Oh, hold on, I should have this available. I'm gonna get this up for you guys, okay? Because I know these candidates that we have coming on Monday have some fans. Yes, Janae Uggan.
Awesome.
Right. And on the Democrat side, Sabina Perez. That's Monday on D18 for our lovely panelists, Sanjay and Kate. My name's Chris Barnett. Thanks so much for watching. Hasta adios.
Adios.